The Crimson warship cut through the void like a predator's talon, its massive hull adorned with trophies of conquest. Behind it trailed a fleet of battlecruisers, each bearing the scars and glories of countless victories. At the helm of the flagship stood Admiral Zarthan Vex, his forearms crossed over his chest as he gazed at the holographic display of the small blue planet. Another hunt, another trophy. Zarthan said, his voice a low rumble that reverberated through his command deck. His dark red skin glistened under the ambient lighting. The thick biological armor covering his 2.5-meter frame, marked with 37 distinct symbols, one for each civilization the Voraxian Empire had subjugated under his command. The ruling council expects this to be a swift conquest, said Malchior, his strategic advisor approaching with a data tablet. Intelligence reports suggest the humans are physically weak, lacking biological armor, and their space technology is primitive at best. Zarthan's mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his species. 37 civilizations conquered, 12 species completely eradicated, and now Earth. He expanded the hologram, zooming in on the continents. Look at them, Malchior. No natural defenses, no biological adaptations for combat. Their bodies are soft, vulnerable. Malchior scrolled through the intelligence report. They do show remarkable adaptability, Admiral. Some reports suggest adaptability. Zarthan laughed, the sound like grinding metal. What good is adaptability against our biological armor, against weapons that have reduced entire civilizations to ash? He dismissed the hologram with a wave of his upper right hand. This won't even qualify as a conquest. It will be recreational hunting. Admiral, with respect, perhaps we should deploy our full forces. Standard protocol dictates. I will not waste Imperial resources on such insignificant prey. Zarthan interrupted. A reduced campaign will suffice. We'll take a third of the fleet, make an example of their orbital defenses, and they'll surrender within their planetary rotation. Malchior hesitated. Some of the intelligence reports are incomplete. There are anomalies in their defense patterns that suggest. Your caution borders on cowardice, Quester, Zarthan said, using Malchior's formal title. The ruling council has approved my strategy. We will proceed as planned. As Malchior bowed and retreated, Zarthan returned his gaze to the holographic image of Earth. Another world to conquer. Another species to subjugate or exterminate. The only question was whether these humans would serve better as slaves or trophies. What he didn't know, what the mighty Voraxian Empire couldn't fathom, was that they had never encountered prey that would become predators themselves. The Voraxian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Zarthan watched with satisfaction as his vessels moved into formation, their crimson hulls gleaming against the backdrop of stars. Target their outer defensive station, Zarthan commanded. Let them see what awaits them. The lead destroyer fired a single concentrated beam that sliced through Earth's remote monitoring station. The human-made structure disintegrated instantly, debris scattering into the vacuum. Send the surrender message, Zarthan ordered. Use their global communication channels. Minutes later, the transmission was sent across Earth's networks, an ultimatum demanding immediate and unconditional surrender to the Voraxian Empire, with promises of merciful subjugation for compliance or complete eradication for resistance. Zarthan didn't expect resistance. None of the previous 37 civilizations had offered meaningful opposition once they witnessed the destructive capability of Voraxian weapons. He settled into his command chair, awaiting the inevitable capitulation. Instead, the sensor officer called out, "Admiral, multiple small vessels launching from Earth orbit." Zarthan raised an eyebrow ridge. Show me. The tactical display revealed dozens of human spacecraft emerging from hidden orbital positions. They were smaller than Varaxian destroyers, clearly inferior in weaponry and armor, but their formation patterns were unusual. "They're dividing into attack groups," Malchior observed, "targeting multiple vessels simultaneously." "Let them try," Zarthon said dismissively. "They'll learn the futility of resistance." But as the human vessels approached, they displayed maneuverability that surprised even Zarthon. They moved in unpredictable patterns, making targeting difficult for the Varaxian gunners, accustomed to larger, more conventional opponents. "What is this?" Zarthon demanded, as the first reports of damage came in. "How are their weapons penetrating our shields?" On the command deck of the Earth Defense Force, Flagship Admiral Karina Taylor watched the battle unfold with intense focus. Her decades of Special Forces command experience had prepared her for this moment, humanity's first contact with hostile aliens. "Adaptive targeting is working," reported Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, her best fighter. Pilot now serving as tactical officer. "The Varaxian shields operate on predictable frequency patterns. We're modulating our weapon systems to match their vulnerabilities." Dr. Marcus Wright, the military scientist who had developed the countermeasures, nodded in satisfaction. "Their biological armor appears to function similarly to their ship shields. They've evolved to withstand specific threats, but lack adaptability. Their technology is powerful but inflexible." Admiral Taylor's expression remained stern. "They still outgun us 10-1. Maintain evasive patterns. Target their weapon systems and engines, not their command centers. We need to disable, not destroy." Back on the Varaxian flagship, Zarthon watched in disbelief as 3 of his destroyers reported critical damage. "Impossible," he muttered. "These primitives cannot possibly—" He was interrupted by a violent shudder as something impacted their own shields. "Upper shield quadrant compromised," reported the defense officer. "They've adapted their weapons to our frequency." Malchior stepped forward. "Admiral, I recommend we regroup and reassess. These humans are using unconventional tactics. Their small vessels make targeting difficult, and they appear to have technology specifically designed to counter our defenses." "Are you suggesting we retreat from primitives?" Zarthon snarled. "The Varaxian Empire does not retreat." "Not retreat, Admiral. Tactical withdrawal to analyze their capabilities and develop countermeasures." Another impact rocked the ship. Zarthon gripped his command chair, rage building within him. Never in his 23 conquest campaigns had any species offered such immediate resistance. It was inconceivable. "Fine," he spat. Signal the fleet to withdraw beyond their lunar orbit. We will regroup and launch a proper assault." As the Varaxian fleet pulled back, Zarthon punched a communication panel, opening a direct link to the ruling council. He would request full deployment now. These humans would not make a fool of him. They would learn what it meant to resist the greatest predators the galaxy had ever known. But deep in his warrior mind, an unfamiliar sensation began to form the first whisper of doubt. In the underground Earth Defense Force headquarters, Admiral Taylor addressed her command staff. The initial engagement had gone better than expected, but she harbored no illusions about their long-term chances. "We've surprised them, but that advantage won't last," she said, examining the holographic display of the retreating Varaxian fleet. "Their technology is still far superior to ours. We need to press our psychological advantage while we can." Maya Rodriguez pointed to the tactical display. "Their ships are designed for heavy frontal assault, not for dealing with multiple small targets. Our missile frigates were able to get close enough because their targeting systems are calibrated for larger vessels. We've analyzed their communication patterns," added Communications Director Liam Saito. "They're highly hierarchical, with all major decisions flowing through their command ship. If we can disrupt their chain of command." Dr. Marcus Wright entered the room carrying a data tablet. "I've completed the analysis of the debris from their damaged destroyer. Their biological armor is remarkable, a silicon-carbon composite with regenerative properties. But it has a critical weakness. He displayed a microscopic image. Earth bacteria, specifically several strains common in our atmosphere, appear to degrade their armor's molecular structure. Admiral Taylor's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting biological warfare, Dr. Wright? Not exactly. But if they attempt a ground invasion, they'll be exposing themselves to an environment their bodies aren't prepared for. Our atmosphere alone might act as a defense system. Taylor nodded slowly. So we lure them into a ground engagement. Make them think it's their idea. She turned to her strategic team. We need to make our orbital defenses appear stronger than they are, while simultaneously presenting Earth as vulnerable to ground assault. As the meeting continued, military bases around the world prepared for the coming storm. Humanity had one advantage the Varaxians couldn't comprehend throughout human history. They had always been both predator and prey. They understood what it meant to fight against superior forces, to adapt or die. It was written into their very DNA. Aboard the Varaxian flagship, Zarthan's request for reinforcements had been denied. The holographic image of Council Member Drazak flickered before him, the elder Varaxian's expression severe. You were given adequate forces for subjugating a pre-interstellar civilization, Drazak said coldly. Requesting reinforcements suggests weakness in your command, Admiral Vex. These humans have technology specifically designed to counter our defenses, Zarthan argued. They were prepared for us. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates they've never encountered extraterrestrial life. More likely, you underestimated them based on physical appearance. Drazak's tone conveyed clear disapproval. The Council expects results, Admiral, not excuses. After the transmission ended, Zarthan slammed his fist against the console. They don't understand, these humans. They're different. Malchior approached cautiously. Admiral, I've analyzed their tactics. They're using guerrilla warfare adapted for space combat. Hit-and-run attacks, targeted strikes against critical systems, then immediate withdrawal before we can bring our superior firepower to bear. Then we change the battlefield, Zarthan decided. If they want to play games in space, we'll take the fight to their surface, where our biological advantages cannot be denied. Prepare the landing forces. We'll establish ground control points on each continent simultaneously. A ground invasion. Malchior seemed surprised. With respect, Admiral, we have insufficient intelligence about their planetary defenses. Their planet is their weakness, not their strength, Zarthan insisted. Our warriors are biologically superior in every way. One Varaxian soldier equals 10 human combatants. As preparations for the ground invasion began, Zarthan felt his confidence returning. Space combat had unexpected variables, but ground warfare was the domain where Varaxian warriors had always excelled. On Earth's surface, the natural order would reassert itself, predator over prey. Captain Krell, commander of the Varaxian landing forces, reviewed the invasion plan with his strike team leaders. We will deploy simultaneously at these 7 strategic locations, he said, indicating points on the global map. Priority targets are their military command centers and governmental structures. One of the team leaders raised a concern. Intelligence reports suggest their atmosphere contains unknown biological elements. Should we deploy in environmental suits? Krell dismissed the concern with a wave. Our biological armor provides sufficient protection against any primitive microorganisms. Environmental suits would only restrict our movement and combat effectiveness. As the invasion dropships prepared to launch, Malchior made one final attempt to caution Zarthan. Admiral, perhaps we should conduct more thorough atmospheric testing before. Enough, Zarthan snapped. I will not be made to look weak before the Council because of your excessive caution. The invasion proceeds as planned. The dropships launched crimson streaks against Earth's blue atmosphere. As they descended, Earth's military forces appeared to scatter, retreating from metropolitan areas to isolated positions, exactly as expected when prey realizes it cannot win a direct confrontation. What the Varaxians didn't understand was that they were being lured into a trap centuries in the making. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting to threats, developing technologies to overcome their biological limitations, and perfecting the art of warfare against superior opponents. The Varaxian landing forces touched down on 7 continents, simultaneously, warriors emerging with weapons ready, their dark red biological armor glistening under Earth's sun. They expected resistance, conventional military forces, perhaps even primitive nuclear weapons. Instead, they found precisely targeted defenses designed to exploit weaknesses they didn't know they had. In North America, the landing zone had been saturated with aerosolized compounds that began to degrade their biological armor within minutes of exposure. In Asia, electromagnetic pulses disabled their communication systems, isolating each unit from the central command. In Europe, sonic weapons emitted frequencies that resonated painfully with the silicon structures in their armor. Captain Krell, leading the primary assault force in what humans called the Middle East, was the first to report serious problems. Admiral, our warriors are experiencing unexpected biological reactions to the environment. Some form of contamination is affecting our armor integrity. Zarthan watched through Krell's visual feed as a Varaxian warrior's armor began to develop a grayish discoloration where it had contacted the soil. What is happening? Dr. Marcus Wright had been right. Earth's bacteria organisms that had evolved alongside humans for millions of years were breaking down the molecular structure of the Varaxian biological armor. What had been their greatest strength was becoming a vulnerability. Meanwhile, General Hassan al-Farsi, commanding Earth's ground forces, implemented guerrilla tactics on a global scale. Instead of meeting the invaders head-on, human forces would strike quickly, exploiting the increasingly evident weaknesses in Varaxian biology and technology, then disappear into prepared positions. "They're not fighting like prey," Krell reported, his voice strained as his unit suffered another ambush. "They're fighting like us." By the 3rd day of ground operations, the situation had deteriorated dramatically for the Varaxian forces. Nearly 30% of their warriors were experiencing severe biological reactions to Earth's environment. Their armor, which had evolved to withstand energy weapons and physical impacts, provided no defense against microscopic organisms that had never existed in their part of the galaxy. Zarthan faced the most difficult decision of his military career. Continuing the ground invasion meant watching his warriors suffer increasingly debilitating effects from Earth's environment. Withdrawing meant admitting defeat to the ruling council, and in Varaxian culture, failure of this magnitude often meant execution. Admiral Malchior said quietly, "We must consider evacuation of our ground forces. This environment is killing them." Before Zarthan could respond, the censor officer called out, "Admiral, multiple human vessels approaching the fleet." The tactical display showed dozens of Earth ships using the same hit-and-run tactics that had proven effective in the first engagement. Trapped between a ground force in crisis and a space attack, Zarthan made his decision. "Order all ground forces to return to extraction points. We will cover their retreat, then withdraw to regroup." The retreat was chaotic. Many dropships were shot down by Earth's suddenly revealed anti-aircraft defenses. Those warriors who made it back to the fleet brought with them not just defeat, but contamination. The bacterial agents that had begun breaking down their armor continued to spread throughout the ships. As the fleet limped away from Earth orbit, Zarthan received the expected transmission from the ruling council. Council member Zerath, the supreme leader, appeared before him, mandibles clicking in obvious displeasure. "You have failed, Admiral Vex," Zerath stated flatly. "The conquest of a primitive world should have been routine. Instead, you return with decimated forces and tales of microscopic organisms defeating our warriors. Supreme Counselor. These humans, they are unlike any species we've encountered. They. Silence. Your excuses do not interest the Council. Zarath's eyes narrowed. We are dispatching the main fleet to Earth. They will glass the planet's surface from orbit, eliminating this unexpected threat. You are relieved of command, effective immediately. After the transmission ended, Zarthon stood motionless on the command deck. His career. His life's work all ended because of one small blue planet and its unexpectedly formidable inhabitants. Admiral Malchior approached cautiously. The main fleet will arrive in 14 cycles. Once they glass the planet, all evidence of our miscalculations will be destroyed. Zarthon turned to his advisor, something new flickering in his eyes. Is that Justice Malchior? To exterminate a species simply because they defended themselves more effectively than we anticipated? Before Malchior could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Intruder alert, command deck breach imminent. Somehow, impossibly, humans had boarded the flagship. Admiral Taylor led the special operations team herself. Their mission was high risk, but potentially war-ending capture. The Voraxian command ship and its admiral then used them as leverage against the coming main fleet. Remember non-lethal takedowns if possible, she instructed as they moved through the crimson corridors. We need prisoners for intelligence and the admiral as a bargaining chip. Maya Rodriguez, now in combat armor, rather than a pilot's seat, moved ahead with the point team. Bioscanners show a concentration of Voraxians on the command deck 2 levels up. The human strike team had boarded during the chaos of the dropship retrievals, their specially designed armor protecting them from the ship's environment while allowing them full mobility. They carried weapons specifically calibrated to penetrate Voraxian biological armor without killing the warriors inside. When they breached the command deck, the Voraxians were caught completely by surprise. For creatures accustomed to being the apex predators, the concept of becoming prey was almost incomprehensible. The human team moved with practiced precision, neutralizing the bridge crew with targeted stun weapons. Admiral Zarthon, however, was not so easily subdued. As Taylor approached him, he drew a ceremonial blade, a symbol of his status as a fleet commander. "You fight well, human," he said, mandibles clicking in what might have been respect. "But you cannot hope to match a Voraxian warrior in close combat." Taylor didn't waste breath on a response. She activated her exoskeleton's enhanced mode technology developed to compensate for the very physical limitations the Voraxians had dismissed and engaged. The fight was brief but intense. Zarthon's 4 arms and biological armor gave him tremendous strength and protection, but Taylor's powered exoskeleton and lifetime of combat training allowed her to match him move for move. When it ended, the mighty Admiral Zarthon Vex was pinned to the deck, his ceremonial blade now in Taylor's possession. "Your main fleet is coming to destroy our planet," Taylor said, standing over the defeated admiral. "But I think you're going to help us prevent that." Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Wright had made another critical discovery. The same bacterial strains that degraded Voraxian armor had an even more pronounced effect on their ship hulls when applied in concentrated form. It wasn't just a defensive measure anymore, it was potentially an offensive weapon. "We've synthesized a delivery system," he explained to the Unified Earth Defense Command. "If we can get close enough to their main fleet, we can introduce these bacterial agents into their life support systems. They won't glass the planet if their ships are disintegrating around them." General Al-Farsi nodded grimly. "A biological counterstrike, fitting given they intended to eradicate our species." Meanwhile, aboard the captured Voraxian flagship, Admiral Taylor interrogated her prisoner. Zarthon, for his part, maintained the dignity expected of an Imperial fleet commander, but as the hours passed, something changed in his demeanor. "Your species was grossly misrepresented in our intelligence reports," he finally admitted. "We assessed you as physically weak, technologically primitive prey. Instead, we found equals. Not equals, Taylor corrected. Different. You evolved biological advantages. We evolved technological ones to compensate for our biological limitations. And adaptability, Zarthon added. The mark of true predators. Their conversation was interrupted when Malchior requested to speak with both commanders. The advisor had been taken prisoner, along with the rest of the bridge crew, but unlike most Voraxians, he seemed genuinely curious about humans, rather than contemptuous. Admiral Zarthon, he said with formal respect, despite his captive status. I've been monitoring communications from the main fleet. Council member Zarath has been less than truthful with you. Explain, Zarthon demanded. The intelligence reports about humans were more complete than what you were shown. The Council knew about their adaptive technologies, their history of warfare, even their biological diversity. They withheld this information deliberately. Zarthon's mandibles clicked in confusion. Why would the Council set me up for failure? Politics, Malchior said simply. Your 37 successful campaigns made you too popular, too powerful. The Council feared you might challenge their authority. This mission was designed to diminish you. Taylor watched the realization dawn on the Voraxian admiral's face. The understanding that he had been betrayed by his own leaders sent to fail for political convenience. And now they send the main fleet to erase their mistake, Zarthon said bitterly, along with an entire species. They'll arrive within 10 Earth hours, Malchior confirmed. And their orders are to sterilize the planet completely. Taylor leaned forward. Then help us stop them. You know their tactics, their weaknesses. Help us defend our world, and perhaps we can find a way for both our species to survive this conflict. The proposal was unprecedented. In Voraxian culture, captives were expected to die with honor, rather than collaborate with enemies. But as Zarthon looked at the human admiral, this prey species that had outfought, outthought, and outmaneuvered the mighty Voraxian Empire, he began to consider possibilities beyond the rigid hierarchies of his culture. The main fleet's command codes, he said slowly. If we could transmit specific instructions using proper authentication, we might be able to divide their forces, make them vulnerable to your biological countermeasures. And so began one of the most unlikely alliances in galactic history, a captured Voraxian admiral and his human captors working together to save a planet from annihilation. As the main Voraxian fleet approached Earth, they received authenticated command transmissions from Zarthon's captured vessel, directing specific battle groups to investigate anomalies in different sectors of the solar system. The fleet commander, suspicious but unable to disregard properly coded orders from a superior, reluctantly dispersed his forces. Dr. Marcus Wright's bacterial agents, delivered by stealth craft to the separated Voraxian vessels, began their work immediately. Ship systems started failing as the microscopic organisms attacked the biological components of Voraxian technology. What had been a mighty armada became a collection of crippled vessels unable to coordinate or execute their planet-killing mission. Council member Zarath, commanding from the fleet's flagship, realized too late that they had been deceived. "Find Zarthon's ship," he ordered frantically. "He has betrayed the Empire." But by then, Admiral Taylor had implemented the second phase of their plan. The captured Voraxian flagship, with Zarthon and Malchior advising, approached Zarath's command vessel under a flag of truce. "Council member Zarath," Zarthon said, standing proudly beside Taylor as they transmitted their message. "You sent me to fail. You withheld critical intelligence and set me against a species that deserves respect, not extermination. Now you face the consequences of your deception." Taylor stepped forward. "Your fleet is disabled. Your ship's biological components are degrading as we speak. You have one option: negotiate peace or face extinction yourselves." The ultimate irony was not lost on either species. The predators had become prey, not through superior strength, but through adaptability, intelligence, and the willingness to find solutions beyond violence. The peace negotiations were complex and often contentious. Centuries of Varaxian imperial expansion could not be undone in days, but with their fleet crippled and their best admiral advocating for cooperation, the ruling council reluctantly agreed to terms. Malchior, revealing himself to be part of a reformist movement within Varaxian society, seized the opportunity created by Zerath's humiliation. With support from other dissatisfied council members, he initiated a governmental restructuring that would eventually transform the Varaxian Empire from conquerors to cautious members of the galactic community. Zarthon Vex, once the Empire's greatest military leader, chose to remain on Earth as the first Varaxian ambassador. His understanding of both cultures made him uniquely qualified to bridge the vast differences between them. "You taught me something no other species has managed in all our history of conquest," he told Admiral Taylor during the formal establishment of diplomatic relations. "That true strength lies not in biological armor or superior weaponry, but in the ability to adapt, to learn from failure, to transform weakness into advantage." Taylor nodded the ceremonial Varaxian blade, now a symbol of their unusual alliance, hanging at her side. "Humans have always been both predator and prey. Perhaps that's why we understood you better than you understood us." As Earth took its first steps onto the galactic stage, the story of how a supposedly primitive species had defeated the mighty Varaxian Empire spread throughout the stars. Other civilizations, long intimidated by Varaxian aggression, began to establish contact with humanity. Curious about the species that had accomplished what none other had dared to attempt. And in the Grand Council chambers on the Varaxian homeworld, where once only conquest was celebrated, new voices began to speak of cooperation, of mutual benefit, of learning from the adaptable humans who had turned the natural order upside down. The red mist of war had cleared, revealing a new galaxy of possibilities, one where being a predator meant more than merely having the sharpest claws or the strongest armor. It meant having the wisdom to know when not to hunt, the humility to learn from former prey, and the courage to evolve beyond one's nature. For Admiral Zarthon Vex, once the pride of the Empire, now its most controversial figure, the transformation was deeply personal. Each day on Earth brought new discoveries, new understandings of the species he had once dismissed as easy conquest. He watched human children play without fear. Scientists work with passionate curiosity. Artists create with boundless imagination all the things the rigid hierarchy of Varaxian society had suppressed in the name of military efficiency. "We thought ourselves the perfect predators," he confided to Malchior during one of the reformers' diplomatic visits to Earth. "But we stopped evolving. We stopped adapting. We became predictable. And that is the greatest danger for any predator," Malchior agreed, looking out over the Tokyo skyline, where Varaxian architectural influences had already begun to appear in new construction. The Council still struggles with these concepts, but they cannot deny the evidence before them. Humanity has much to teach us. Yes. As spacecraft bearing the combined insignias of Earth and the Varaxian Empire began venturing into unexplored regions of the galaxy, they carried with them the most important lesson of the failed conquest, that the strongest predators are not those with the most fearsome appearances or the longest history of victories, but those who recognize when it is time to become something more than a predator. And throughout the galaxy, as news spread of the alliance between humans and their former would-be conquerors, other civilizations looked toward Earth with new interest. If these adaptable, innovative beings could transform the Varaxian Empire from enemies to allies, what other impossibilities might they achieve? The red mist had indeed cleared, revealing not just a new order, but a new understanding of what strength truly meant in a universe where even the mightiest predators could learn from those they once considered merely prey.